All right, everybody see my screen? All right. So here we go, y'all. So this is the assignment 1 right here. And you already gone through, y'all can tell me everybody already went ahead and forked it, right? You already have it forked, right? On your assignment, right? And I'm going to use assignment 1 to really help us review and go back over the chapters as well. This first assignment is pretty self-explanatory, but one of the things I want to help you understand is how to follow the instructions. Also, too, it's so important that you learn terminology. You have to learn the terminology because that's what's going to help you understand what you're reading when we're asking you to do X, Y, and Z. Later on, as we go further in training, I will pull in some coding challenges, and that's going to be on my own channel. Hopefully y'all had a chance to go over there and subscribe to that channel. And then we're going to break down some of these coding challenges because I want to help you build your confidence. So let us get started. So y'all can see this, we're assignment 1, right? Candidate testing, right? So it says, okay, staff, we received many applications for our astronaut training program, and we need to do an initial evaluation of the candidates. Management needs you to create a quick quiz to help select the best candidates. Note, the requirement below are what your end assignment will look like. See, and this is what you're going to get on your job. When you actually go and you do your stand-ups, we're going to give you you're going to get requirements. They're going to give you some instructions on how we want this feature to look. And this is where in those meetings, you get to ask questions because you have to get an understanding. You have to understand, okay, because sometimes the question is vague, is very vague, and the description that they're giving is vague. And you need to ask, okay, are we covering this base? Do we have a database for this? Do we do this? Blah, 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 blah. More experience you get, the more questions you'll be able to ask. So we're starting here now to get you to understand this. So when you get in your stand-ups, when you're at that job and you're in that stand-up, you can participate. You have the confidence to say, hey, I got a question. Help me understand why we're doing this. And why is there a better way that we can do this? And so this is what's important. So we're starting this. So look at it this way. We're basically training you and getting you prepared for that job when you're on a team in your stand-up. And it says, this assignment is broken down so you can complete small pieces as you go. You need to move sequentially, starting at part 1. Please read the whole assignment page before starting. It's important that you get a good understanding. All that getting, get an understanding. Here we go. We have requirements. 1, ask the candidate user to enter their name. 2, use a loop to ask 5 questions, one at a time, to the candidate. 3, collect the candidate's answers. 4, check those answers for accuracy. Case insensitive equality check. We're going to go over, this is a part of this full assignment. Calculate the candidate's overall percentage. Determine if the candidate did well enough to enter our program. Need to be greater than or equal to. This is a compound operator. You know that, right? You know what that is, right? That's a compound operator. That greater than, equal to. That's why I say it's important to know what the terminology is. This is a compound operator. And with me, I will ding you if you call the equal sign an equal sign. It's an assignment operator. I want you to get in the habit of calling it that. Do not call it an equal sign. Even if you hear anybody else like Kyle call it an equal sign, it's okay for him to call it that. He's a senior developer. You're not. And what we want to do is that could be the thing that can cause you not to get the job. And the reason why I say that, it's just like application. When the human resources is going through the applications, they want those applications to be formatted correctly. If it's formatted wrong, it's going in the garbage. They ain't gonna even look at it. Well, think about when you're going to your job interview, use the correct terminology, because you're going to be at a panel. There's going to be different developers there, and they want to hear where you are. Some things may turn them off. It may turn them off when you use the wrong terminology. And right there, they won't give their vote for them to give you the opportunity. They do that. So to you, it may seem petty, but it's just reality. So I want to reinforce that you learn terminology and understand the terminology. Now, once you get to a certain level, they're not going to trip off of that. But because you're an intern, they're going to pay attention to that. Make sense? It makes sense, everyone? All right, awesome. It says, so we know that this is right here, this a greater than equal sign is a compound operator. And we're doing 80% to pass. The seventh step, display the results. So in your mind, as you go through these questions, you should be thinking, it's called pseudocode. You should be thinking, what do I need here? So on line 1, when it says ask the candidate, the user to enter their name, what should you be thinking? What part of the code you need? What do you need to write to ask the candidate their name, to enter the name? Prompt. The key word is prompt. It just says ask the candidate, but in your mind, you should be thinking prompt. Prompt the candidate. Now, let me ask you a quick question real quick. When everyone forked their assignment, did it look like this? You see mine right here? Did it look like this? Did y'all work inside the index.js, or did you know where to go? And y'all can unmute and say something if y'all.
Somebody had mentioned not doing the index, so I went into that candidate testing.js.
There we go. And this right here could be very confusing when you don't know, right? And so when I came and I looked at it, I was like, okay, that don't look right. So I said, I moved this over and I came down here. This is the spec. The spec is where your test is going to be. And we'll talk about later on when we start doing testing. So we wrote tests to make sure that this is going to work correctly. So the correct one, this is where we needed to be within that candidate testing. So did everyone go here to write their code? So thumbs up, good on that? All right, good.
I did not, and that's why I had trouble even starting. So thank you for unlocking the entire world. So now I can actually get started. Thank you.
There you go. And I know that too, okay. Because
this makes more sense. Like I can work with this now.
Awesome. And so that's why I want to. Now, let me do this for you real quick. Make sure yours look exactly like this. Then delete whatever you had in there and make sure you have these lines to make sure it looks just like that. Okay. Because we don't want any conflict. So make sure your line 1 looks like that and your line 3 looks like that. So you can use mine as a guide real quick. So do you see it? Now, how you open this up, if you click on this little icon right here, that opens up this panel right here, or what we call sidebar. It opens it up. So if I hit that, it closes it. This is when we start getting into our version control, when we start submitting stuff to our GitHub account. That link right there is what it's called Git. You got that symbol on all your IDEs, on your code editors like VS Code. That means version control. And then this is your debugging. When we decide to get into debugging stuff, these are the packages that can be installed. You can see the packages right here. We're using Jasmine, Readlinesync. Like I always say in the videos, none of this is magic. It's coming from somewhere. So it's no magic to none of this stuff. And then we got a unit test check right here. But the ones you're going to be mostly in is this icon right here and this icon right here. You're going to use those two a lot. But here, I just want to make sure everything is set up. So when I want to collapse that, I just do that. So, and then you notice how I got mine stacked on top of each other. I got my console at the bottom. You can actually go into the settings and change that because this is the way I like it, because I want to be able to have more real estate, especially when I'm doing these videos. And sometimes I would just make it bigger so that it'll go across the whole screen. But there we go. But my love, let me move this out the way because this is going to annoy me. Wait, okay, I gotta move it. Yeah, let me move it over here. They love things because I couldn't see it. So I had to move that out the way. It's just preference. As you become more of a developer, you're going to figure out your preference, what you prefer. I just prefer it this way because I can type more stuff here. So let me see here. You got everything already set up? I can't see your name. Is it Sabrina?
Yes.
Yeah, so you got that done?
So I'm on candidate testing, ready to go.
All right, hit this right here, and then click on candidate testing.
Yep.
You're there?
I'm there.
Cool. And then you did go back and change your file, index file, to the defaults, right? You didn't put anything inside your index file. You didn't type anything in there, did you?
No.
Good. All
like
right,
I said,
good.
I couldn't even get started because it didn't even dawn on me. A lot of the things you're pointing out now it all seems more common sense because you're really laying this foundation so that we understand how to even move around and make sense of this new world and this new language. So thank you so much.
Yes, that's
you're speaking the way that my brain understands. So thank you.
Oh,
I'm excited to actually get started on the assignment now because I'm like, oh, okay, this actually makes sense because this is
good.
Some of what we've already been doing.
Awesome. So here we go. So we have the requirements. So first off, in your mind, when we look at question 1, it says, ask the candidate user to enter their name. Well, now this is what we're going to go over our review now. We're going to start here on line 1, over here in my Replit, right? Now, I need y'all to participate here. What is this right here called? Can y'all see the highlight? All right. Yeah,
what is it? Variable? No.
What is it called?
Is it the constant that lets you have an input? No.
It's simple too.
The operator?
Nope.
It's not the operation.
All right. Going once, going twice. All right. It's the keyword. It's the keyword that helps you to declare a variable. Because reality, you don't have to declare a variable with the var or the let, which is lexical, and the const, which is constant. You don't have to. It's going to, if you don't declare with the keyword, it's going to automatically make the variable global. That's dealing with scope. So I'm going to take this bit by bit with you guys because I want to drill this in with you. So we know that, and why would we assign? Why would we use that keyword? Why wouldn't we use var? Why wouldn't we use let? Why did we use const?
Because we don't want it to change.
You don't want it to change. You want it to be final, constant. You don't want to have anything down the road accidentally, another fellow developer changing a variable that you don't want it to be changed, or reassigning the value of it. So you can't reassign a value to const. And const is, like I said, final. We could put let there. We can put var there. It's still going to work, but we put const there because we want that to be constant. That's what const means. Constant. It doesn't change. And all right, now the next part of this, what is this called?
Operator?
Say it again.
An operator?
What are you looking at? Are you looking at input?
Is it the operand?
No. What is the lifeblood of programming? if y'all remember my videos, if you listen to my video, what is the lifeblood of all programming? What was the first chapter, the fourth chapter? What was the fourth chapter about?
Data and variables.
There you go. And what is that called?
Data?
Now, what is this called right here? Input. What is that called?
Is that a variable?
There we go. Remember, variables will always be on the left side of the assignment operator. Values will always be on the right side of the assignment operator.
So it has a constant and a variable?
No, the variable is the variable. Input is the variable. Constant is the keyword.
Oh.
That's the difference. So that's why I want to make sure I point that out to you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Because this is the architecture, this vocabulary and this architecture, the rules, the syntactic rules. This is where things are like falling apart for me because like things just don't make sense compared to English in certain respects.
There we go.
So
it is.
Just to be clear, input is the variable. Variables will always be on the left side. What will always be on the right side again?
Values.
So is the const saying that the input variable cannot, or the variable input cannot be changed?
Right, because remember, variables can be reassigned in JavaScript. We can reassign this variable. So const will not allow you to reassign it. Let will allow you to reassign it. And sometimes we will want to reassign our variables. Var, which we rarely ever use var, because var can be pushed to the global. It can be hoisted. That's another term we haven't even touched yet. We'll touch that down the road, but it's called hoisting. You don't want to name your variables var because it can be hoisted out of a local scope, your local inside of your local a function or something like that. You want to use let. For the most part, every time you declare a variable, always declare it with the keyword let. And another thing, you cannot use keywords as variable names. Like you can't use const as a variable name. You can't use let as a variable name. Well, you can't use the lowercase const because those keywords that are these are keywords that they use for your programming language. I can't think of the word right now. But if I capitalize const, I can use that because remember, JavaScript is case sensitive. The const, lowercase const, is different from the capital const. Those two different words. So that const, lowercase const, you can't use that inside a programming language. It's reserved.
Could we use let as a variable word if we're trying to like give it a value on the right side for if some other reason we would put in string or we would capitalize it to get it out of the variable variable mode. No, nope, so I'm saying it wrong.
Yeah, so let's look at it like this. Right here, I can do that. I'm saying where input is. You
like
cannot.
If for some reason we wanted to define let.
Nope, you can't. You can't do it like you can't. No, that's a good question because this is what cause you an error. If you do it like this, you see that? That's let, right? You can't use that reserved keyword. But if I do that, it could be.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right, it could be a variable, but you never want to do that.
If you capitalize it, not put a string around it. For some reason, I was thinking string would knock it out of that blue color.
Never, and you never put strings around your variables. Your string, quotations. You never put quotations around your variables.
That's just going to be on the right side of the operator.
Yes, right. Yeah, your strings are always, those are values. So always remember them as values. So let me fix that back. Okay, so far we're understanding and getting the understanding that const is a keyword, let is the variable. This variable name can be anything. It doesn't have to be input. You just got to remember your variable names have to be descriptive, very descriptive. Do y'all understand what that means?
It has to be unique and descriptive.
Does it have to like, do you mean
Yeah.
descriptive, like giving a certain action that it has to like add up to the value? Like it has to,
Yeah, it got to represent the value.
it has to represent the value. Yeah.
There you go. You want it to represent that value. Yeah, it's gonna be unique to whatever the variable, because you can always reassign that variable. But you got to be very careful with that as well, that your conventions, your naming conventions are good. So for instance, give you an example. If I was to have a brand of cars, like I have BMWs, and I'm having an array, of cars, and it has about 5 different brands in there: BMW, Chrysler, Ford, Chevy, and Mercedes. And those are all strings. They're all brands of the cars. I want to store all of that inside of a variable. And so let me give you a little demonstration here so y'all can understand what I'm saying. So I'm gonna put it right here. So this is what an array, y'all understand. I know we're gonna be talking about arrays in chapter 8, and I do have that video coming this afternoon. So in this array, I'm gonna have a string of car names. So I'm gonna have BMW. Then I'm gonna have Chevy, Ford, and forgive me for my misspelling, because I will misspell words. Mercedes, did I say that right? Did I spell it right? And we'll just leave it at that. All right, so we have 4, and you notice here I have a double quote around Ford, right? I have single quotes around BMW, but I have a double quote around Ford. Do you think that's going to break anything?
No,
All right. Why not? Why won't it break?
it's still a string regardless.
There we go. And only in JavaScript, though. You can't do that in other programming languages. In JavaScript, the single and the double quotes are valid for a string. So, but what you can't do this. And you see how it's giving me an error lined up under Mercedes because of what I just did. You can't mix quotes. They either have to be the same. They have to be the same opening and closing. So you can't do that. That's not legal. So when I do that, that's gone. So now what I want to do is here, this array of cars, I want to store them inside of a variable, but I want to give it a descriptive name. So what name could I give it? What's a descriptive name to represent these cars?
Vehicles.
Well, vehicle can
Car
be
companies,
we could do car brands. That's a good one.
car brands,
Yes. And how would I type that?
lowercase CAR, capital B RAND.
And what is that called?
Camel case.
There we go. Camel case. That's the convention that we doing inside of a JavaScript. It's a little bit different in Python. You use underscores to separate the words. To separate the words in JavaScript, we want to use camel case. Is this legal right here?
It is,
Okay, tell me why.
but not recommended.
There you go. It is legal, but not recommended because
It's harder to read the separations of the letters to figure out exactly what the developer is trying to give you the information about.
correct.
So that gives you a chance. Each word being capitalized after the first word is lowercase allows you to get a clear understanding of what the developer is saying. It acts as like a space, that capital letter, because you can't put spaces in there.
Correct. So there you go. So yeah, understanding. This is why we do it. So you want to make sure that your variables are very descriptive. So let me put that space back in there. So now input is a variable that's very descriptive, right? Because it's asking for some input. So over here, when it says ask the candidate user to enter their name. Well, this input is going to allow me to prompt them, because why? What is this right here? Require. What is require?
Value.
It is a value. It is a value, but what kind of value? Think like the compiler.
The user needs to you have an action on the code.
Okay, but what is required though? Think like the compiler. I got some clues right there. Whenever you see things, your mind should think this is what it is.
Well, when you hover over it, it says property.
Yeah, it is a property.
No.
But what else now, it's not really a property, but think about it. It's going to say that. You see what I'm clicking on here? What am I clicking on? It has an opening and closing
parentheses.
And when you see opening or closing parentheses next to some word, what
string?
No, what do you think? What should you be thinking when you see parentheses? Two things. You should be thinking it's either a function or a method. A function or a method. I want you to think like the compiler. These are things you can see with your human eyes and pick up real quick. Anything with parentheses is either going to be a function or a method. And functions and methods, they are verbs. They are actions. They perform actions on something. And require is a method. And that method required is doing what? It's getting access to what is this called inside of it. What is that?
A string.
It looks like a string.
Parentheses. Okay.
But what is that called though? Readlinesync. You close. Readlinesync is a.
Is it a data type? Or no?
Sure.
Oh.
It's a package.
Close. It's in a package, but what is it called? We call it a module.
Okay.
Readlinesync is a module. And it has a lot of code. Now, this is something I want to point out to you here. All right, y'all see my screen over here? Let me get rid of that. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger if it'll let me, because sometimes it won't. Oh, well, hopefully I can see this. Can y'all see this? Over here, what I'm scrolling on the left side, my Geeks for Geeks. It's called 4 main objective-oriented programming concepts. Now, although this is more geared towards back end, but I'm going to use the front end to help explain this, because this is something you want to get your head around. An object-oriented programming concept. This is for Java, but it's a principle. It's really a principle. And we call it the 4 pillars. And object-oriented programming reads generally referred to as OOPs in the backbone of Java as being a completely object-oriented language. JavaScript has these same principles too. And the principle here are abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. And so let's sit down here and let's see what is my definition, which one to give me first. So here's abstraction. And this is what I want to show you here with Readlinesync. Abstraction is a process of hiding implementation details and exposes only the functionality to the user. In abstraction, we deal with ideas, not events. This means the user will only know what it does rather than how it does. Well, Readlinesync is abstraction. It falls into that principle. How it does, we know what it does, but we don't know how it does it, right? That's abstraction. Let me put it in more plain, simpler terms. when you get into your car, all you care about is that when you stick that key in and turn that ignition, that car starts up, right? You're not thinking about that it has a starter, that the starter has then it has to turn on the alternator. The alternator runs the car. It has all this electrical stuff going on. You don't care about none of that, right? All you care about is when you start that car, put that key in it, that car is going to start. This is what abstraction is about. As a developer, eventually you will learn how it works because you're like a mechanic. Readlinesync at this point is abstraction because you know what it does, but you don't know how it does it yet. But we do know that we need this Readlinesync. This require is getting information from this Readlinesync so that I will be able to prompt a user. This is a part of Node.js modules. It's called Node modules. This is where it's stored in. If I go over here, let me see, what was that? Packages. Inside packages, you see we have the Readlinesync packages installed, Jasmine. Well, we're installing this from Node. That's where it comes from. There's no magic like I said, under the hood. There's no magic. And so what we see here, Readlinesync, is a part of abstraction. We just know it works. We don't know how it works fully, but we know it works, and that's all we're concerned with right now. And so all of this is stored. What is a variable for now? So now we have this input. What is a variable for? Somebody tell me.
Container to store information, to store data.
Correct. It's always a container. That's what's frustrating to a lot of times in the beginning of this. We forget what a variable is used for. You're going to use them throughout your whole for everything you do, you're going to create variables. Now, this is something else I want you to see. It's important. The primitive data types. Have you had a chance to even explore this? I kind of mentioned it in the videos. There are 6 primitive data types, not 6, 7 primitive data types. And let's kind of read it because I want you to understand this. In JavaScript, a primitive value, primitive data type is data that is not an object. You understand that? It is not an object. And you can look this up too. You can Google this for primitive data types and look for the MDN because I'm on MDN right now. It's not a primitive. You got to understand this because it's going to confuse you when I tell you what the 7 data types are. And then you find out, wait a minute, they said that strings are objects. I'm going to explain to you why they're objects. And it says, and has no methods. There are 7 primitive data types: strings or string, number, big int, boolean, undefined, symbol, and null. It's good to get familiar with these because most of the time, a primitive value is represented directly at the lowest level of the language implementation. Here's another key. All primitives are immutable. Do y'all know what immutable means?
Unable to be changed.
There you go. They cannot be altered. It is important not to confuse primitive itself with a variable assigned a primitive value. So now, when I get over here, in here, a string by itself is a primitive data type. You have 7 of them. They're immutable. What makes a string an object or a number an object is because you store it inside of a variable. Once that primitive data type is put into that variable, it now becomes an object. Now, do y'all remember when I talked about console.log? Do y'all remember about the breakdown of console.log? Do y'all remember that? Okay, so let me make sure we understand. So if I do console.log, What's the breakdown? Somebody break these three down for me. It's three things you're seeing here on console.log. Break it down for me. Because this is definitely going to solidify your understanding. Somebody take a stab at it. Because if you watch the videos, I broke it down.
Action. Log is the action, right? Of what you want it to do.
Well, log is right. It's but what is it called though? It is an action, but what is it called?
It's not a method.
No,
right?
You're right. It is a method. And this is why I want to build your confidence, because you second guessed yourself. And it's okay. But I'm going to build your confidence. You're going to know what it is once we get done. So log is a method. And how do you know it's a method?
Because it comes after the dot. No, because the parentheses.
There we go. Because a property comes after the dot and it doesn't have parentheses. That's how you're going to know the difference when it's a property or when it's a method. Now, what is the dot called?
Starts with an A.
Access operator.
There we go.
Yeah.
And what is console?
Function.
I would say the constant is the variable.
No. Console.
No, console is the variable. Sorry.
Mm-mm.
No, shoot. Okay.
You okay?
Is that the property? No.
Maybe keyword? No.
I literally just read it. Object.
It is an object, and it's the Windows object. So,
you say window?
Yeah, it's the window object. Now, understand something here. If I go and when I do this, all right, like we're going to show you in a minute. So when I do input dot question, and inside here, I'm going to pass in a string. All right. Pay attention. If console.log, if console is an object, the dot is an access operator, and log is a method. This is how you break it down. The dot allows the log to get access to whatever is in the object. The object, now this is where we go to this part. Inheritance. This is one of the four principles, right? Inheritance. Inheritance, you understand what inheritance is, correct? A child inherits from their parent.
Oh, yeah.
So here, inheritance, this is an example of inheritance. Log wants to get access to that window, to that object. It wants to inherit what the window has so that it can now log whatever information I place into it. So if I put this variable input, notice there's no quotes around it. It's a variable. I'm putting it inside of there so I can print it to the console and it can give me whatever is inside to it that it'll print to the console. Now, the question I have for you now, with the information I just gave you, break down line 3 for me. Somebody break down line 3. Because you're going to use this. So break down line 3 for me.
So the dot is allowing the question method to access the input object.
And there you go. Is an input and what's inside that input object? What's inside of it?
The string that's asking what is your name?
What's inside of it?
Readlinesync.
There we go. That is what's stored in there. See, now this is another key for y'all. And this is something that you're building on. This is the building block. Whenever you assign a value to a variable, it becomes an object. Everything in JavaScript is an object. The reason why primitive data types are not objects, because They're outside of the scope, to put it that way. They're being brought in to the process. That's why we call them primitive data types. So just think of primitive data types as being the outsider, and everything inside of JavaScript is objects. And so what we're doing is we're bringing that outsider inside of the family. So once it's stored in, and the only way they can get inside is if they are now, this is another one I want to read to you. Encapsulation. Encapsulation. So what do you think encapsulation is? Encapsulation means data hiding. We hide data using encapsulation. So variables is the face of whatever the data type is. It's basically the container that has some information inside of it. And in order for me to get access to it, I need certain tools to allow me to get access to it. So that data, that value, in order for it to be an object, it has to be encapsulated inside of something, which is a variable. All right, anybody, somebody give me some feedback. How y'all feeling about this so far? I'm hitting you with a lot of information, and we haven't even started.
I feel like I understand the concept slightly, but I feel a little confused on what Readlinesync does. I understand that input is now attached to that. So now that input's not just a variable anymore, it's an object, you're saying, because it was assigned, or I guess, I don't know.
No, you're right. And so let's explain that to you. What Readlinesync is. It's inside of your node module. It's actually some code. They actually wrote some code that will allow it to be printed, or to be to take a variable or take an input and create an input, basically to create an input. You don't have to use Readlinesync to prompt somebody. There's actually another function that you can write, say prompt, and just a window will pop up, a pop-up window will pop up.
So
this
it prompts the user. That's kind of what it does. Okay,
that's so what it is.
Prompts the user. Okay,
and it gives you the prompt so that you can ask the question. The question now is right here that you're going to ask inside this method right here that we passed in a string. We passed in a string called "What is your name?" And now that question is now is now holding the question, and that question wants to get access to what input is holding or hiding. So that's why I call it's encapsulation, and it's also inheritance. It has some information that it wants to inherit. Because when we get into a lot of method chaining, you need to understand there's the parent and then there's the children. And we'll talk about that later. So there's some information inside the input that question wants to have access to. And then this is where your mind should be going, right? Your mind should be going to like a prompt. I need to prompt the user on the first question. Ask the candidate user to enter their name. And so we're basically, the first step was to create a variable that's going to hold the value that has the information that will allow us to prompt the user. That information is now being stored in a container that's called input. Input is now an object because it holds the key that we need, or the information we need, that's going to help bring the process together. And now I have another part of this. So in order for me to prompt them, I need to be able to ask a question. Now, how do I ask that question? I need that method. I need that method called question. And I'm going to pass into it a string. And that's called an argument. And we'll talk about the difference between parameters and arguments later on. and it has a dot. It's chained to this input. This input is an object that has information. Question now has a question it wants to ask, but it can't do it by itself. It needs some help. So it needs that input to be able to ask the question to the user. So that's why we're chaining it together. This is why we have input, which is the object, the dot, which is the access operator, and the question method that has a question argument passed in it. Does that make sense so far? Or is it really confusing? Yeah, because
I'm just taking notes. So let me make sure I got this right. So input, okay. Redline is being stored in a container or variable called input. Because of this, input is now the object. Question is the method. Question wants to ask something, but it can't do it by itself. It needs input to do it.
Right.
Is that correct? And then
that's in a human readable form. Yes.
Yes. And then the way to access that is through the access operator, which is the period.
Right.
Okay.
And later on, we're going to use the bracket notation, because the dot is the dot notation, and then the bracket notation does the exact same thing as what the period does, which you should be reading that in chapter 7. I think it's in chapter 7, chapter 8. Okay. So now the next part of this, it says, now we're not going to do the loop. Use a loop to ask 5 questions one at a time. But we're not going to do that because you haven't gotten to that point yet. So we're not going to worry about that, right? And it says collect the candidate's answer. Now this is right here. When it says loop, we're going to be thinking about a for loop or a while loop, which we go over that in chapter 9. All right. And then we're going to collect the candidate's answer. So now this is how this works. Collect the candidate answer. How that works is what we're seeing on line 3. We're asking a question.
And saving the input.
There we go. Now, how will I get that info? Once I ask that question, it's going to prompt the user, what is your name? When the user types into the console their name and hit enter, where is that information going?
We need to make a variable for it
There,
to have it saved in.
you're on the right track. So I'm going to create a variable, and what will be that? We're going to call it candidate name, because that's it right here, right? Let me go ahead and copy that. And then I need that right there. So when I ask that question, and once they hit enter, that information is going to be saved in the candidate's name. Now, let me do this. Let me copy this. I'm going to do this right here. And I am going to run this. Let's see if this works. Okay, let me see what errors I got. Is it going to let me run it? Do I need to comment some stuff out? Let candidate, oh, you know why?
I'm a little confused because in the exercise, you just declare it in 1.1a. So I just put let candidate name equal and then empty strings. And then later, okay. And then later on, I just the candidate name.
Yep. All I'm doing here is just demonstrating something.
Okay.
So I'm a comment that I had to comment out line 10 because I've already had it declared on line 10. I'm just want to test something out, and I want to just show you real quick. All right, let me stop. Let me run it. Let me see if, okay, what is your name, right? Now notice up here, it asks me the question. Now, when I go ahead and type my name in, and what I should do is put a space in between there next time so I can have a little space. So I'm gonna stop it. Let me do this so we can have a little space. What is your name? And matter of fact, if you make it look a little bit better, let me do that. It's all about semantics. Okay, as a programmer, you want to think about every little thing for the user, right? So here we go. So what is your name? So I'm gonna put my name in. So now when I hit enter, it stored my name. How do I know that? Because I console logged it right there. I console log my name. Now, if I take the console log out, you won't see it. You won't see anything. You just got to believe it's being stored there. The reason why we use our console logs, so that we can test our code right now, because we haven't learned how to write unit tests yet. So you're learning how to test your code right now. So I just put that console log there so I can test, did that information get stored where it needed to be stored? Did it get stored in that candidate name? That makes sense? All right, awesome. All right, so let's continue to read on. So like I said, these questions, because I can go through all 70 of these questions and I know what direction I want to go in. I'm just cherry picking through it because you're only doing part 1 right now. So let's go back down here to part 1. Let me make this smaller. And so here, so we did that minimum viable quiz, candidate name, ask the candidate name, look to TD1, which we're in, TD1A, is that where we at? TD1, here's TD1A right here on line 9. So it's asking us to go to TD1.1A and to start a code. On the line below this to do comment, define a variable called candidate name. So we already did that. They did it for you, right? So let me go ahead and let me comment this. Let me get rid of this because I don't need it. Well, I'll save it. I'm gonna comment it all out because I'm gonna pull it in later on because we've already did the work, right? So with an initial value of an empty string. So that's where you got that empty string from, right here, right? So all you did was this, right? Now, let me stop there. Let me ask y'all, why are we asking you to initialize it to an empty string?
Is it because we want the candidate to be able to have the input or the value?
Whenever you do empty strings or empty arrays, you're going to use that to store information in. That's why you're doing it. Anybody, somebody else was saying something?
I was just going to say, it's kind of like in other programming languages, you have to declare a variable as a specific data type. Mm-hmm. To me, it kind of seems like that's kind of what the goal is.
It can, but not really in JavaScript, because it's a dynamically typed language. I can reassign it. And in a statically typed language like Java, C#, you can't reassign it a different data type. I can reassign candidate name a different data type. I can change it to a number if I want to. But what the empty string represents is storage. All you're doing is storing data there for later. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment, okay? Would that make sense to you, Michael?
Yeah, so I guess I didn't understand because I know that it can be reassigned. What's the benefit from just leaving it uninitialized on line 10 there?
So if I just did this like this, when you say uninitialized,
and then,
like that.
And then later just putting the string there, because input.require automatically turns it into a string. So I guess I didn't understand why we had to do the empty. Is it just for the use or the people reading the code's benefit?
No, it's going to be the store. You're going to use it to store stuff because remember, the variables can be reassigned. And what you want to do is you want to have that empty string because we're going to put some information into it later. It's just like a placeholder. If I was to say it like that, and sometimes you got to play around with it for it to really make sense. But you're correct. All I have to do is, this is just called declaring a variable. If I try to run this variable, I'll call this variable, I'm going to get an undefined because I never gave it an initial value. But if I give it an empty string, it's going to have an empty string there. So let's see if I can, let's do this. Let's see what happens. So All right, so let's do our test, right? So let's see what happens if I do this. Let me stop that. Let me run it. Okay, there's nothing there when I run this. So it's not giving me anything because there's nothing there for candidate name. So type, let me spell it right. All right, so let's see. It tells me it's a string, right? So if I take off that type of and just say candidate name, it's an empty string. There's a value there, but there's nothing there. It's empty. But yet, when I put type of in front of candidate name, it lets me know that it's a string. So whatever is going and stored inside there is going to be a string. And it's just like, think about whenever you hit the print, when you're building your software and you're prompting user for information, you're going to want it stored in there so this stuff can go to your database. So you're going to have a name, a line in your database that's going to be called candidate name as part of your schema. And what happens is once I hit save, it's going to save in my database that candidate's name, because I'm going to have that a part of my schema. So think of it like that, as storing information for your database. This is why we are giving you an empty string, because we want to store some stuff there later. That makes sense? You say yes? I
Yes,
see a
sir.
check mark. Okay. All right, y'all. All right, so what we did here is we created the variable candidate name with initial value of an empty string, because remember, an empty string is a value. How many of you all had a chance to look at the ASCII table? You checked it out? All right, good. Now, when you watch, you got a question, Micah?
Oh, no, sir. I was just saying.
Yeah,
I
you
was
just
trying to
okay. Remember in the video, if you guys watched the video on binary code, did anybody watch that video, by the way, on the binary code that I did?
I watched
Kinda
part of
listen
it,
to
and I'm
it in the
rewatching it tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah.
That's cool. But I taught you how to count in binary, right?
I know how to do.
And we compared it to decimal. You know, you might not even remember from growing up that that's what it was called, decimal. You're like, oh, really? When I think of decimal, I'm thinking about a decimal with some numbers behind the decimal. I didn't know it's called
No,
decimal.
it's the numbering system. It's the numbering system, just like hexadecimal and octal are also computer numbering systems that are used by computers.
Correct.
Yeah, I've been on the hardware side my entire life. So this software programming stuff, like this is stuff that I just never got into. And here I am trying to figure this out now because it's a job requirement.
Okay, cool. And so as I taught you how to count in binary, and I taught you how to compare it to how you count in decimal, because in decimal, it's 10 based. And we're used to, we normally used to start at the number 1, but really it starts at the number 0.
Mm-hmm.
So the 0 is a value. It has a value.
It's also a placeholder.
And it sure is. And so, and like I said, it's a placeholder where you can increment. And in your mind, you were taught when we were children how to count. We incremented by 1. Subconsciously, we do it so fast, just like a computer. If you give it the right information, it does it very quickly. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Or 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We don't have to really think about it, but in our minds, our brains is actually incrementing it by 1/4. In our brain, it's actually going 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. You've already been introduced to loops and didn't know you were looping through this stuff and incrementing it by 1. And so this is what we're going to teach. We're going to teach you how to think like the compiler. And so we're incrementing it by 1, and we're learning how to go through the process of starting off with 0 base, and it's rejogging your memory that it starts with 0, because we're going to be using 0 for indexing. To index everything, index is 0 based, and 0 has a value. So when you went to the ASCII, in ASCII, an empty space is assigned a number. That number has to be, we use it to convert to binary. Binary code is from 0 to 255 bytes, right? So 255 bytes, which is 256 items.
Guys.
And that means that represents our English letters, our alphabets. It represents every keyboard on your keyboard. It represents the different symbols and everything in spaces. Now, you might have wondered up until this point, how does that keyboard know that when I hit the letter T, capital letter T, that it reads it? Because how it knows it is because that capital letter T or that capital letter A is signed a number, a value. And what happens is what that value is. Now, if you remember in our binary, I broke down 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. I broke those bits down to you on how we convert that number into binary code, which binary code is about zeros and ones, zeros and ones. I'm preparing your mind to be able to write efficient code by just that simple concept, zeros and ones, and how zeros and ones are represented. They're represented like on and off. All 0 is off, 1 is on, because when they developed the computer, they developed it to count first, and they can only do it in binary code. A binary code really is a switch. They're called micro switches. And they get a jolt of electricity go through it, and it's either going to turn it on or turn it off. And because you have enough of them on and off switches, those switches represents a number. And that's how your computer, every time you hit that key on your computer, it sends a signal. And it knows what that signal is. So in your mind, everything in programming, it is a value. An empty string has a value. So that's why I took that long way to explain that. Did that make sense? Making sense to y'all so far? All right, so yes. We look for to do 1.1b. So 1.1b, where you at? 1.1b is 1.1b. It's right here where it says function asks for name. To do asks for candidate name. So we already kind of did that, didn't we? We did it right here, right? So now I'm adding that to a function. One quick note, do not modify anything on this page. Oh man, you talk about troubleshooting. So many people, they'll go down here and start deleting stuff down here because they don't understand and moving stuff around. And next thing you know it's not working. Then I have to go through and debug it for them. Say, okay, you're missing this, you're missing that. So don't delete anything off the page. So what did I just do? What we did, we initialized the variable to an empty string. And then the instructions, because I want you to learn how to follow instructions. It says look for to do 1.1b, and that's right there, 1.1b. And it says ask for candidate name. So this is a function. This function is being called already. It's already been called. Where's it at? Ask for function. Because these are the module exports, because this is all the stuff that's getting exported out from here. And so here's the function. It's called ask for name, right? It's being called right here inside this function run program. So that's how it's being called. And then we got to follow the directions, right? Y'all with me still? And so inside of the function ask for name, write code asking the user to enter their name into the program and store the value in candidate name. That's what we did, right? So we asked the question, right? And we asked it to be stored in the candidate name. So we got candidate name up here. It's already been defined and initialized. So let's run that. always, when you do any little bit of code, it's better to run it and get it to work with little small chunks, as opposed to go through the whole thing and then try to run it and you get all these errors. It's easier to fix the errors when you're at the beginning of something. And once you get something working and you move forward and you have another error, you know it's something in your immediate code and not something that you did before, as long as you didn't modify anything. So let's run it. All right, what's my name? That is my name. Okay, so now what can I do to see if that worked?
You could do console log.
All right, and what would I put it? Because that's going to be the key right here, is understanding where do you put your console.log.
Would you put it right under the ask for name? So you would put it
right here?
Would you have to do it inside the parentheses? Yeah, you'd have to do it inside the parentheses on line 23.
What parentheses are you talking about?
The ones after ask for name. So you talking
about this right here?
Yeah.
Those are called curly brackets.
Curly brackets, yeah.
Yep. And this is your code block. Remember, anything inside your curly brackets are your code block. Inside your parentheses here, inside of a function, we haven't gone over this yet. I can actually pass in a parameter. A parameter is like a variable. And we'll go over that because that's when you're dealing with scope. And I don't want to confuse you today by going over it, but that's when you're dealing with scope, when you use parameters and you're looking for an argument. So now if I run this, let's see if it works. Okay. So let me put my name in here, hit enter, boom. So now you know where to put your console.log. Now, I like to play around with stuff. All right. So let's comment that out. What if I put my console.log up here? What will happen?
It's not going to work.
You don't think it's going to work?
Well, it'll
just
show
be an empty string.
That's correct. It'll print nothing.
Okay.
It'll show nothing because there's nothing defined. It's not giving you.
Okay.
It's not going to give you the name of the candidate, is what I'm saying, at that point of the program, because it's not in the sequential order.
Correct. And the cool thing is it's called scope. You're right on the right path. But let's see though. Let's see what happens. Okay. It didn't do it. And everything you said is correct, but it's called scope because you know why? It worked down here because this is local right here. This is my local scope. It's this function right here. So this is why the console.log needed to be here. It needed to be in this code block because this is scope. This is local because this is the function. All of this stuff out here is called global. We named all of our variables globally so we can use them locally later on. So that means I have access to all of these variables and all of these functions if I wanted to. That makes sense?
So another way of saying it, sorry, I'm like so new at coding that I just need to generalize it first. So when you're saying globally, we're saying like the declaration of these variables is the global concept. And then when we do the sequential order of like different actions or prompts, that's the localized version of the variables.
It's in that way. You're in the right path. Okay. Global means you have access to it from anywhere, from any part of your program. You have access to it. Local means I only have access to it in that particular code block. It's only local to that variable. So check this out. I can create this variable again right here. Let me do this. Now I'm gonna copy this and I already have it right here. You see it? I have let candidate name, right? Now remember when I did it up here, it's now global now, right? Let me X this out. What is the rule when you're declaring a variable? Anybody remember what the rule is?
I think that it has to be let or constant if you're declaring. Is that the rule or no?
No, that's a rule. But let's look at the error. Let me run it. I got an error, right? Get familiar with the error. What does it say? What does this say, right? Read it out for me, y'all.
Syntax error that says identifier candidate name has already been declared.
And what does that mean?
That means it's already been assigned to something else.
It's already
It means
been
we already
declared.
did let candidate. So we already had that formula of declaration.
Right.
Right.
They're in the same scope. Both of these are global. You notice I didn't get that error when I had it inside of my function. So look, so let me show you real quick. I have it right here. I have let. I declared it with the let because it's locally scoped. This is globally scoped. So what that means, I'm gonna see if y'all pick up on this real quick. What's the difference? Why didn't I get an error when I declared it here with let, but I got the error when I declared it with the let up here?
Because it was in a different sequence order, right? Or like,
And what does sequence mean? What does that mean?
well, that it's part by part. So that if it's higher up, it's going to show the error up there first. I mean, it might eventually show the error down there, but don't errors in debugging work that it shows you the first error first and then keeps going through the sequence? Or
Yeah. But this is why we want to understand scope. And we'll understand it later, because we'll go over it later. I can put that function at the top. And it's not in sequence anymore, right? The function, I could put the function anywhere. But globally, the reason why this gave me an error is because I'm trying to declare the same variable twice. All I have to do here, if I want to get rid of that error, is to remove that let, right? So now if I run it, let me clear it. I run it now, it works. Because you cannot declare a variable with a keyword twice. I can reinitialize it, and that's what I did. I created the variable up here, and then I just reinitialized it to an empty string. So it worked. Let's see how it works. So I'm just gonna do that. See? It gave my name twice, because I asked a question here and it ran it. And then when it did it again, because you ran it again, then it went on ahead and did my console. It ran it down here when I did the ask. It asked it again down here. So what it did is it went in order. It asked me the question here when I hit Terrence, but it has nowhere to store it, right? Or maybe let me put a console.log up there. Okay, so at console.log, everything worked, right? So now let me do this now. And this is how you get your understanding. How you see it put a space in there, didn't it? But that empty string showed up, right? You see that space in between? So when I console log candidate name here, it's an empty string. I haven't assigned it yet to be able to all my information to go into this empty string yet. That's going to come down a little bit later when we start running our for loop. But I just want to kind of break that down to you so this can make a little bit more sense to you. So it won't be so confusing. And was that helpful doing that demonstration?
No, it was, because I did get a lot of the code right in the part 1 graded assignment, but I didn't understand why it was working the way it was. You know, like I had the right formulas and variables, but I didn't really understand the language. And I felt behind because of that, you know, so I feel a lot better now. Yeah.
Awesome. So far, so good. We wrote the code asking the user to enter their name in the program and store the variable in the candidate name. We did that, right? So we're going to make this a little bit smaller. So we did that, and we console.logged it to make sure it was stored there. So we did that. So look for to do 1.1c underneath. it write a message to the console greeting the user using the name they just provided. So now I'm going to comment this part out because I don't need that really. I'm just using that for testing purposes. So now let me get down to 1.1c. 1.1c, where you at? All right, here it is right here. 1.1c. This is where my program is going to run. So now it says what should I do here, y'all? It says look to do 1.1c. Underneath it, write a message to the console. Know the terminology, greeting the user using the name they just provided. How would I write that?
Maybe a console.log and then the string with like hello or greetings.
Let me make sure I spell console right.
Yeah.
And always remember to put in your semicolons. All right, so how would I do this? What would I write?
Hello. And then I always get mixed up when to use a plus for to concatenate it or just do a comma. Or do we use a plus on this part?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, because you're going to use a plus because we're definitely adding a variable to this. So it said welcome or hello. How you want to say it?
Hello,
Either.
comma.
Okay, hello. So you want to put a comma right here?
Yeah.
All right, let me get rid of it. So hello. And I need to,
And plus.
Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
And then candidate name.
And let me go copy that because I will misspell it in the.
Yeah.
And that's another thing you got to watch out for.
I misspelled it the first time around and then I had to redo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's frustrating because
Yeah.
I am horrible at spelling. And a lot of your problems is going to be because you misspelled something. So, okay. So let's see here. So it says underneath it, write a message to the console greeting the user using the name they just provided. So hello, so-and-so son. Glad to have you here. How about that?
Welcome to your first challenge.
Okay, that's a good one.
So if I wanted to say hello candidate name with an exclamation point at the end, and then and then start a new sentence, would I just keep that, would that exclamation mark just be just at the beginning of that new sentence in the same string?
Remember, you will have to do another concatenation.
Okay.
You have to add another plus sign, just like that. So let's run this. Let's see what we get. Welcome. It didn't put my name in there. What did I do wrong? Let's see. What did I do wrong? Did I spell candidate name? So let's go back. Let's underneath it, write a message to the console greeting the user using the name they just provided. Okay, what did I do wrong? How come it didn't pick up my candidate name? How come it didn't pick up my candidate name? All right, so let's look at it. We got hello. That printed. It didn't print my candidate name. Anybody got any suggestions?
This is where I was getting stuck yesterday. I was having the same issue.
You was having the same issue? Okay. Anybody else had the same issue? So everybody, it didn't work for nobody?
Is there a problem with this line right here, 47, or a surrounding line?
Mine worked. I did it like that and it worked. So I don't understand why mine is working and it's not there. Weird.
Because you know what it's picking up?
What?
it's picking up this right here. Because that's an empty string. So let me do this. Let's save. Oh, I'm gonna hit save. So I forgot you don't need to save it. So let's run it. So I'm gonna put T right there, right? You see how I picked up the first one?
Here's my question. If you did that, wouldn't it always come back no matter what you said at that prompt? What is your name? Wouldn't candidate name always come back Terrence because you've identified it as Terrence as a...
It will, because it's picking up this candidate name right here because that's that empty string, right?
So it's picking that up instead of what we wanted, which I thought was to have the input question defining the candidate name.
It is. Now what we have to do now is we have to understand, okay, we got the input, it stored it inside this candidate name, and then it did not pick up this function right here. It didn't pick up the function right there. So that function is what's holding the prompt, right? So let's look at this again. So
well, I'm confused. So my string is still empty in mine, but it prompts me. So it says, what is your name? I type into the console, Joanne or Joe, and then it says, hello, Joe. And then it asks the first question. So why is mine doing that?
All right. So it's an order of how you did it then.
Okay.
Because all right, so is your candidate name inside this function ask for name? Did you put that right here? Is that inside your function ask for name?
Yeah, it's like, what is your name?
So you have it inside the function ask for?
Like I have my actual name, Joanne, written in the code?
No, I'm talking about inside this function ask for name. Do you have the candidate name assigned to input?
Yeah,
question. So that's inside ask for name.
Yeah.
And so when you went up, do you have it up here as well?
Up where? Sorry.
On line 3. Like I have mine on line 3. So if I do this like this,
I have let candidate name equal empty strings on line 6.
Mm-hmm. On line 6.
Under 1.1a, define candidate name.
Mm-hmm. So you have it there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me show you.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
And so this is what we call a logic error for me. I have a logic error. So now I got to sit here and figure out, okay, what did I do wrong? Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out for a second. I'm going to comment this out because it's going to run twice for me. Right. So I'm going to comment this out. I got rid of it in the candidate. So let me run it. So I'm going to put T in there. And then I'm going to put T again because I didn't. So it's reading the one because it's reading this first candidate name right here. I'm picking up, it's on line 11 for me. It's picking this one up when I wanted to make sure I'm getting this candidate name right here. And so what I need to do is I'm going to run some tests. I want to test this for a second to see, okay, why am I getting that? Okay, so this is running the first one. So let me go down here. I'm going to comment this one out. And this is what we do. We debug. You have to learn how to debug. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to play around with this. Okay, so it's still not picking up my my candidate name. So I'm not in a templates literal. So I'm going to comment this back out. And I'm going to come back down here and uncomment this back out. And then I am going to come down here and I'm going to do something different. All right, so now I'm gonna do something different here. Okay, it is not reading my variable.
Um,
Go ahead.
I have a question. So in line, it would be around line 16 or so, where in the ask for name function.
Mm-hmm.
Does it have to do with maybe the fact that like we're using the let again? So therefore,
Let's see. That could be it. That could be it. That's tested because it's already been declared at the top. It shouldn't be, but I could be wrong. Psst, you're right. There we go. All right. Was that Micah?
oh yeah.
There you go. You are correct. By removing that let out of there, it was able to read it. So good job. Good catch. There we go.
It's probably hard for you because you keep adding new stuff and taking out stuff. And so like
well, and then also too, what I did right here, I use a template literal.
Yeah.
And I don't need to use, I use a template literal just to see if that was the problem. And that isn't. So I'm gonna go back because we haven't really talked about template literals yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and fix that right back.
I actually kept having the same mistake too, because I put let twice, and my friend Paige helped me with it because I was like, why is this not working? So it's that sensitive that it's like if you declare it twice,
very
it does not
sensitive.
work. Okay.
It's very sensitive. So let me go ahead and put it back because we haven't talked about template literals yet.
Is it bad practice to use template literals? Because I used it on one of my previous assignments.
Now you want to use them. You're going to use them a lot. You're going to use them a lot. So
I just didn't know if it was better standard to do it this way or if it was okay.
Now this way, it's just because we're teaching you. Template literals is what you're going to use all the time. And so I always look at it. So my name, I need to put a space in here so we can make it look right. Plus, so we'll put an empty string right there. There we go. So just to kind of make it look readable and stuff like that. So good catch on that one, Micah. And like I said, even for people like me, I overlook stuff. It's always good to have a second set of eyes to see stuff for you because your eyes get so tuned into something, you miss little small things. And sometimes you have a friend, a developer, and look at it for you. They catch it just like that. And sometimes you just got to walk away from it for a minute and then come back and say, that's what I forgot. All right. So now we're at the single question quiz. All right. So we did see. So now ask the user to answer a single quiz question. Look to do 1.2a. All right. So 1.2, where you at? A, right here. So we got defined questions and correct answers and candidate answers. So here below the to-do, we want to-do comment, define variables called questions, correct answer, and candidate answers. Questions should be initialized to the following string. Now, I got to look at this. Sometimes people run into errors with this stuff because I don't know if they actually fixed it. But in the past, you see how I got that extra space inside there? You got to have it in there exactly the way they're asking, because you would get it won't build for you or it give you an error. So you need to keep space in there. So it says, note the trailing space at the end of this string is required. So we have that trailing space in there, right? So now the correct answer should be Sally ride, right? So I'm going to copy that. Now, I don't recommend you copying and pasting because you can run into a lot of errors by doing copy and paste. Y'all should be typing this stuff out. I highly recommend you type it all out. Don't copy and paste. But I'm doing this just to save a little time. All right. So here we go. Candidate answer will initially be set to an empty string. So I want to set that to an empty string. All right. So far, so good, right? Now, here we go. Find to do 1.2b. Here it is right here. Using your question variable, display the question and prompt the candidate for their answer. Store the response in one of the variables you define just above. All right, here y'all go. Somebody tell me, what do I need to do to make this work?
Candidate answer equals.
Yep, let me go up and get it. Let me get candidate answer. And what did you call it?
Oh, not equals. What is it called? It's an operator. It's not an access operator, or is it assignment operator?
There you go.
Yeah.
Assignment operator. All right. So that's where you going with that. So it's the candidate answer. That's the variable that we're creating. It's already been declared, and we can pull it because it's global. So we don't need the let inside of our even though it didn't give us an error, it was a logic error though. Go ahead.
And then input dot question.
You want input that question?
Yeah, input dot question, then parentheses question after that. But maybe that's repetitive, and maybe I could just do input dot question. But it worked for me when I did that.
You're okay. We're gonna build your confidence. We're gonna build your confidence right here.
I'm like, I think that's right. Candidate answer, assignment operator, input dot question, and then parentheses question, semicolon.
Okay. And so it says, using your question variable, display the question and prompt the candidate for their answer. Store the response in one of the variables you define just above. Okay. So let's run that. What's your name? It's a hello to welcome to. Who was the first American woman in space?
Sally Ride.
How do I spell that?
Sally Ride.
Spell it for me.
You have to do a capital S.
Okay.
ALLY space capital RIDE.
So are you saying that it makes a difference?
It does.
Why does it make a difference?
Because it was inputted exactly like that. And so if you do a lowercase, it will be wrong.
All right, but you're gonna find out in part 2. We're gonna show you how to fix that.
Cool.
But good job. Cool. All right, so what do I need to do to make sure that's right? How do I know it's there? What do I need to do?
You can do console log.
Where do I need to put it?
You need to put it right underneath it in the curly brackets.
What line number? These are your line numbers over
31. 31.
So go to number 31.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I need to go to a console.log. And what I'm going to put inside there?
I believe, so I actually didn't do this part, but I believe you just put exactly what I put on line 30.
What is that?
Candidate answer.
Is that all I need?
I think you need the whole line.
You think so?
You need all of it. Maybe really? Not. Maybe you could just put, should we just put the value instead of the, I don't know.
But what is console.log?
It's showing the data in the console.
True. And what am I passing into the log? Log is logging it to the console. And what do I need? Because remember, this right here is prompting the user a question. And then when I put in my answer and I hit enter, it's being stored where?
into the candidate answer. So we just
And
need the candidate answer.
There we go. That's all you
Okay.
need.
Okay.
And so let's go ahead and run this. But now I spelled my name right. And I got 3 ways of spelling my name, and it's a long story. I have my name is spelled one way on my birth certificate, and it's spelled a different way on my social security card. And somehow, some way, it gets spelled another way somewhere else in my life. I'm like, oh my God. So I got 3 ways of spelling my name. All right, so we know that's work. So the console.log, and you have to put it in the right place for it to work. So we know that works. So I'm gonna comment that out because we know we already tested it. We know that it works. Now it says under to do 1.c, check the candidate answer to see if it's correct. Provide basic feedback to the council, letting them know that their answer is correct. Make sure your small app works properly before moving on to part 2. Now, did you have problems with this one? 1.1c.
They said that we weren't required to do that one, I think, and I didn't do it because I tried doing it and I was super confused on how to how to check the correct answer. I just didn't know how to do it
because we haven't gotten to for loops yet. Has anybody took a stab at it?
No.
Nope, nobody tried it yet. He's like, let me see. All right. Should I show y'all this or should I wait? Should I wait or should I show y'all? What do y'all think?
It's going to be due on Monday.
Yeah.
What's going to be due on Monday? Part 2?
1.2c is supposed to be due on Monday.
Is that what they said?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like we need this anyway.
Okay, like you said, I got to go over chapter 7 and chapter 8, so it'll be due, huh? Okay,
sorry,
so let's think about.
I'm sorry, I think you just said this, but I was trying to type in the Sally Ride part. Where do I put? So after I answer the question, Sally Ride, and I have candidate answer, correct answer, and candidate answer. How do I get it? How did you get it to come up with Sally Ride again to where it shows the correct answer?
Console.log. Remember, you always need to
up where all the lets are, all the declarations are.
Nope. Do you see? Looking at my code where it says function asks questions, and then we asked the question candidate, and we did the input question, and we passed the question, and then we put that console.log right there because it's important that you put your console.logs in the right place. I just commented it back out because I'm not going to need it now. I just needed to make sure it worked.
So I don't need to put in.
Well, you put it in because you want to test it to make sure it's working.
Okay.
All right. So I just commented out. So this is where we're going to have a little bit of fun. So 1.1c. So it's asking for us to do some comparison here, right? So so this is the graded quiz. And now remember why I talked about parameters? You notice on line 34, it passed in candidate answers as a parameter. So what it's doing is this graded quiz is pulling that information right here, which is really being stored up here. So it's pulling it from right here. This is why we initialize it as an empty string. So this candidate answers right here is pulling it from right here. So whatever I have in this function, and once it gets stored in candidate answer, it's going to be candidate answer in this string, and then it's going to come down here and it's going to pull it in from right here. Now, I'm doing this on the fly. So let's see how many mistakes I make. So we want an if. We're going to have an if statement. Now, this is the syntax of an if statement. And so I have the if, I have a curly braces. I'm going to put my condition inside that curly brace, and then I have a block of code where I want to execute it, right? My statement. So in here, what am I comparing? I want to compare what to what. So it says here, check the candidate's answer to see if it's correct. So what I want to compare it to what? I want to compare candidate answer with the correct answer, right?
Yeah. When you want to use strictly equals on that?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. Sounds right to y'all. So let me go ahead and copy this. Candidate answer. And then I want to compare it to what? The correct answer, right? And like I said, I'm copying and pasting these variables to make sure I spell them right. Because it is crazy when you're trying to debug and all you did was spell it wrong. And he was like, it takes forever to figure that out. So here we go. We got the candidate answer is if candidate answer is strictly equal to the correct answer, what do I want it to do?
You want it to store it as correct.
We can do that because I want to
do
now let's read it.
console.log. Console.log, correct.
There we go. There we go. Console. That log. Don't forget. I always like to type in the beginning. Make sure you type it out. Do your syntax first and put your semicolons. Get used to closing it with a semicolon because it's so easy to forget them. And every statement should have a semicolon. So now I can pass in that string. What did you say? Correct?
Yes.
And what else should I do there? What else could I add there?
Good job.
Add a else statement.
We could do that, but I want to check it first. So correct answer. And what is the correct answer? How do I know it's the correct answer? What do I need to pass in here? What else do I need to do?
They Sally ride, maybe.
But how do I do that?
Do plus correct answer
There we go.
as the variable.
There we go. Let's see if that works. All right. So here's the moment of truth. Let's see if I know what I'm talking about. That worked, didn't it? But it ain't done yet. I need to test it some more, right? Y'all saw that? Let's test it again. Let's do this. It should be blank because I didn't put an else statement in here. So if I hit enter, this should be blank. All right, it's not blank. So who said we needed an else statement?
I did.
You did? So do you know why we use an else here?
We're using it if the candidate answer and the correct answer aren't matching.
All right, explain it to me again. Let me make sure I understand what you said. Say it again.
So we're doing that just so if the candidate answer and the correct answer aren't the same, it goes down into the next code bracket, and we can give them the correct answer or tell them that they got it wrong.
Okay. And that's why you have an else there, because you saw it didn't print anything because I didn't have an else block there. So if I do a console.log, I mean, that's embarrassing.
Change it to YOU, not YOUR.
There you go. Good catch, because my grammar is horrible. So, all right, let's go ahead and hit that. Let's run it. It worked. So simple. Not that much code, was it?
Now, is it saying it's wrong just because it doesn't have the full word Sally Ride, the
Yeah.
2 words?
Yep.
Well,
And because
even because it doesn't have the uppercase. So then will we have to do lots
That was
of
my next
else
question.
if, else if, else if with different options to be able to get?
No. All we have to do is convert it. Remember a method? Have y'all read about strings in chapter 7? You know what a method is? To lowercase. All we have to do
Oh,
is
right.
all we have to convert that input to lowercase. So whatever you put, I could type Sally Ride in all lowercase or all caps. It's going to be correct because whatever I put in there is going to reduce the answer to a cap size that it makes it not strictly, so I'll be able to convert my answer. So right now it has to be capitalized exactly the way I put it in there because I don't have a type conversion function put on it yet. I didn't convert it to a lowercase, and that's an answer because they're gonna ask you to do that to make it insensitive. But that's how you're gonna do it, and I'll let y'all figure out how you're gonna do that later on. But right now, it has to be typed in exactly the way we put it in the string with a capital S. So whatever we stored up here, Sally Ride, it has to be typed that way. And somewhere in here, I ain't gonna show y'all right now, y'all gonna figure it out. You want to convert that to lowercase. So no matter what they put in, it's going to convert to lowercase.
When we do the next part of our assignment, do we just add it on to the replit that we forked in the first
This
place?
one right here.
Okay.
This one right here. You're just going to continue to build this one. Just remember, do not delete anything. All right, somebody been chatting, and I ain't been looking at the chats. I probably give me somebody to. All right, Michael, you got it. You said I'm looking at the chats now. You were saying something at 1.1c comments was confusing.
These are mostly just comments or
Okay.
trying to answer your questions. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Coolio. All right, yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Did I help y'all out? Help y'all figure this stuff out for the first part of the assignment?
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was helpful.
All right, awesome. Now, also too, always clean up your code. I don't need none of this stuff right here, so I'm gonna get rid of that. So always go in and get rid of your console.logs because that wasn't necessary. Once you know it's working, it's called refactoring your code. I don't need that. Now I need the console.logs inside here, but I don't need them everywhere else that I commented stuff out. Don't need all of that stuff. Yeah, so you may write some stuff just to keep your stuff so you can know what you're doing, but you want to clean it up. Clean it up. Okay. So any questions?
No, I'm good. I have to head into work, but thank you so much for this. And
Have a
I'll
great
see y'all
day.
later. Thanks.
Have a
Bye.
great
Thank
day.
you.
And I have this, as soon as this video is available, I have to go and edit it, then I push it up on our channel. It's a pretty long video.
Thank you so much for just slowly working through all of the little different parts to really fill in my understanding. And then I really do appreciate that this also is recorded because the way I learn, I just process slowly so that I can actually go back and watch the parts that were moving a little fast for my mind. I can slow down and watch it again because I really want to learn this stuff. Like if we learn this now, then as we move forward, things will just be so much easier.
Yes.
Thank you.
And like I said, let everybody else know. You want to encourage all the other students to let them know that, hey, you need to go ahead and